To invest or not to invest? That's the question that thousands of venture capitalists have asked since the beginning of time. We're Team Pink Diamond, and we're aiming to help answer this burning question with the use of machine learning and AI. Our team is comprised of 3 students of the Master of Management in AI program at Queen's University. I'm Marwan, and I worked with Eric to perform the EDA and pre-processing on our dataset, as well as develop the baseline model. Eric built on this work by deploying our alpha release, and Nick took it to the next level to help us deploy our beta release. Now, looking back at the problem, the average investment associate at a venture capital firm spends over 20 hours pulling a short list of company candidates from a platform like PitchBook or Crunchbase to analyze and then spend around 10 hours conducting various financial analysis on these companies, including DCFs, relative valuations, and developing KPI metrics that can be presented to management. Some key statistics to keep in mind is that over half of venture capitalists admit to using their personal networks to drive deal flow, that over 90% of venture-funded startups fail, and that 81% of venture firms surveyed this year have stated that they're going to invest in 2 or fewer companies due to the current economic climate. With this, there's a clear gap in the market that needs to be filled in order to help firms be more selective in their investments, as well as have a higher likelihood of success. Our work is inspired by a company called EQT Ventures in Sweden, which has built a startup investment recommendation system that helps manage over 30% of their deal flow per year. To get some context on the size of our market, there are around 1,500 venture-related firms in North America alone, 800 of which are classified as boutique. Over a quarter of these firms admit to not having a data scientist as a part of their team and are therefore limited in their ability to leverage AI to its fullest capacity. What we aim to build out in the long term is a platform where users can log in, look for a company of interest, and be able to see our assessment of how successful that company is likely to be based on the fundamentals and unique characteristics that we analyze. We assess the effectiveness of our product through focusing on a precision metric in our modeling. The rationale for this was that having a false positive prediction would be much more expensive for the user than a false negative. In terms of our front-end product and prospective platform that we're looking to build in the future, our key KPI will really be reducing the amount of time it takes to create a short list of companies for further analysis, as well as gauging how many of our predictions of companies either get acquired or have an IPO. In terms of where we stand in reference to other market solutions, you have some key companies such as Crunchbase, PitchBook, and Traction dominating the aggregation of startup-related data. You also have companies such as SignalFire and Bloomberg Beta that help predict successful founders. We're positioned a little bit differently in that sense, that we're not looking at just human capital factors, but rather taking the entire holistic view into consideration when attempting to predict startup success. In terms of the data that we used, we sourced it from Crunchbase and leveraged their free data from 2013 and prior. The key disadvantage of using this was obviously that we were not using very current data, and that the data integrity was definitely lacking, which caused a lot of time to be spent on pre-processing. The data was comprised of 11 different tables, which we joined and created 10 additional features to improve our predictions. Given that this is a classification problem where we're trying to assess whether or not a company gets acquired or has an IPO, we use the library called PyCaret, which functions a lot like AutoML. It allowed us to build multiple models in a very short amount of time to build the intuition for which algorithms might be the most effective for our use case. From looking at our results, we chose to go with XGBoost as it had a higher precision as well as a reasonably high AUC value. In terms of our architecture, we received the data in MySQL format from Crunchbase. We then converted that into a CSV and did initial EDA with Tableau Prep Builder. From there, we imported the data into Google Colab, where we used the PyCaret library to build out our initial model. We built on these models through focusing on XGBoost and scikit-learns library and pushed the resulting pickle file into a Flask app environment that was eventually deployed on Heroku. For our alpha release, once again, we used XGBoost, and our front end had around 43 features that the user had to manually fill out as a form. Obviously, this was not the ideal user experience that was intended, but served as our base deployment. For our beta release, we hyperparameter tuned our model to improve its predictions, and were able to achieve a much higher balance of precision and recall through using the smoke technique that generates synthetic samples from the minority class of a dataset. On the front end, we were able to cut down the number of features to 12 and significantly enhance the user experience through introducing dropdowns instead of input forms. If you follow the GitHub link at the end of this presentation, you'll be pushed to here, which is our latest release of our product. So it's a fairly simple form where you just have to fill out each value below and then click predict. We'll just go through it one by one just to go through what exactly these inputs are. So this is the number of milestones achieved within your company. And a milestone is really defined as a major event, such as releasing a brand new product, reaching a large number of active users, basically anything that would reach the press in terms of a major event. Number of relationships is really the number of high-level relationships you have with key titans of industry and other major startups, possibly creating partnerships or alliances with other startups in your industry. So here we can just put, for example, 5 and then 10 major relationships. The next thing is just filling out these drop downs. So one, selecting your industry vertical. So we can choose tech. Then selecting the number of funding rounds. Let's do 1 to 9. Investment rounds. Let's do above 2. Funding total range. Let's do between 3 to 1 million. And then valuation total. Let's choose this first option. Total raised amount. Let's do 64 to 105. And then if your location's in the US, then which state of the following 5? If not, just don't fill it out at all. If you select Texas, and then just entering the amounts for the Series A, B, or C rounds, if relevant. So here we'll just put 1 million for this Series A. And then when we click predict, just have to put a 0 here and a 0 here. Click predict. You'll see at the very top, you see that our model predicts that this company will be successful, and it's denoted by that 1. In terms of user feedback on our latest release, users commented that it would be incredible to be able to upload CSVs instead of filling out an online form, that we should make our user design a little bit brighter and more eye-catching, and that it would be great to provide a summary of rationale of why our model predicts that a company will or will not be successful. Finally, our last piece of feedback is really related to what we're planning on doing in the future, which is being able to create a platform where someone logs in and can see their prior predictions of a given startup. In terms of our next steps, we're planning on now transitioning to using Crunchbase Pro to introduce richer, cleaner, and less sparse data into our model. We also want to try to leverage deep learning to try and run our predictions to mitigate the need for feature engineering. And finally, in terms of our front end, we want to integrate some JavaScript to ensure that users are restricted to entering the correct data types per input field where applicable. If you'd like to take a closer look at our work and provide some additional feedback, here are the links to our project. From everyone on the Pink Diamond team, we thank you for tuning in.